Welcome to a new episode of Erasing Shame. My name is DJ Chuang. I'm joined again with Dr. Jessica Cho, my co-host and conversational partner. On this episode, we're talking about emotional availability. So we imagine someone who is newly married in their 30s with a baby or two, maybe toddlers, and they're managing all the demands of life. And in the back of their mind, during a small break in the action, they might be asking, how do we stay emotionally available to the people we love? Jessica, thank you for joining me for another conversation.
Happy to be here.
Yes. So as we started talking about our topic today, we were thinking of a young married couple. They've got their hands full. We're going to assume they've gotten past the first year or two of exhausting feeding the baby at all hours of the day and night. And now they're getting back to a sense of normalcy. The baby is sleeping through the night. The toddler is starting to go to school. And somehow, because of the demands of parenting, the couple and their partner may not feel as connected with each other in terms of their marriage. So what are some things that the couple can do to still realize that they have a wonderful marriage to nurture and enjoy while they're still parents?
As you're kind of walking me through that scenario, that the first word that kind of pops up into my mind is that idea of self-care. Emotional availability, I think, is just, it's tied with your ability to make sure that you are not just surviving baseline, but really above baseline. I think, when we talk about self-care, we're really thinking about this idea of what's refueling or recharging you. That doesn't mean, you are, I would say recovery is something where it's like you're at deficit and you're really just meeting baseline again. But when I talk about self-care, I'm really talking about, hey, how do you really juice up and amp up going above baseline? And that is so different for every single person. What recharges them, what fuels them, what just makes them tick. And a lot of people think that it's maybe like exercise or eating good food or whatever it might be. But a lot of times I think when we're talking to a young couple or a young parent, time is of the essence. They're probably working really hard to save up for something, or they are at deficit because there's so many things that are vying for their attention. And so really thinking about what are these moments that can really recharge them. And that's not always a spa day, like an 8-hour thing. It's these moments where I'm really encouraging some of my young moms to, hey, listen to a song that really refuels you. What gets you going? Is it a praise song? Is it a jam that you're really wanting to feel? What do you enjoy? Right. And really, for some, it's really as simple as like, are you thirsty? Then drink water right now. Don't wait, go up and get some water. Or do you need to use the restroom? If you need to use the restroom, don't hold it, go right now. That is a form of self-care that we absolutely minimize. And so just thinking about ways to meet your own needs, but going one step above that and thinking about what really recharges you so that you can have this emotional availability and capacity to be there for your loved ones, for your partner, your parents, your friends, your village.
Well, let's take that in two steps. Okay. So from my experience and talking with a wide variety of people during when I was pastoring and as I socialize with people, I think a lot of people meaning a little bit more than majority, so 50-some%, are in that space of surviving and functioning. So they're below baseline And every break they get to have a spa day to themselves or to take a Sabbath away from the family for half a day or a night with the boys or the gals, they're just fluctuating below baseline. And when they can get to baseline, they can relax a little bit or they can get a full night of rest. So you're suggesting that people can actually live a life where they actually have a regular routine of self-care so that they can be at baseline and even above and really enjoy life and have a sense of thriving and flourishing so that they can actually be emotionally available to actually connect even better so that their relationships also have this quality of life. And so that's the two parts. So people that often struggle um, below baseline, they don't even realize that there's this life above baseline.
Right.
So how do we help people to realize, okay, there's more than baseline or survival or functioning, even while you're dealing with young families and kids?
Yeah.
How do we even find the space and time and margin to realize, oh, there's baseline that we can self-care ourselves into. And then secondly, we'll talk about, well, how do you thrive beyond that?
You're hitting such a great question because I think that being in deficit is so normalized. And so, because of that, we don't even think that we can be above deficit because being in this rat race is so normative. And I think again, when we look at context and just kind of zooming out and really looking at our parents' generation, like what's self care? That I think some in some level hard work, their level of perseverance, and for many, I think you hear this idea of like businesses. I mean, businesses are open because they have to make money, and so there really isn't this idea of like people going on vacations. And so I think now what I see is people go on vacations like once a year, which is wonderful. I'm glad you go on a vacation. But the vacation isn't the main thing. It's about learning how to be off because I think just like we need fuel and we need to eat every day and we need to maintain every day, sometimes that one vacation isn't going to hold us over for the rest of the year. And so identifying what it means to be in deficit. Am I tired? Right? I think there are two different mentalities of like, we gotta toughen up and keep going, which is very helpful and it can be very productive. And um, it gets us to achieve certain things that maybe we wouldn't have if we quote unquote gave up. But I think there's a balance in understanding, what do I need? What is it that I need and that I want right now? Um, and so often I think when we talk about deficit, those two questions are not even asked. It is not about what I want and what I need. It's about the end goal. And that end goal, as amazing as it can be, sometimes there is sacrifice to that. There is sacrifice in relationships. There is sacrifice to your own physical and mental health.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Mm-hmm.
and learning how to really balance that. I think people, when they reach that end goal, for some of my clients, when they reach that end goal, they don't find it as fulfilling or rewarding because they got there and they sacrificed so much of what was
Mm-hmm.
valuable and important to them that
Mm-hmm.
they don't have the wins to celebrate it with the ones that they love. And that's just incredibly heartbreaking because we think that once we achieve this thing, this goal, like I will be so happy and I will be able to celebrate and do all these things. But recognizing again along the way, you have to have that maintenance. When you think about going on a trip, you have to make sure that there's gas in the car to let you get there all the way. If you go with an empty tank, you're going to hit some trouble. And so going back to this idea of what is that balance really requires us to think about, what is it that I want and need right now? Not what can wait. What is it that I can do later? It's right now. Right now in this moment. In these next 5 moments, I'm going to give myself, what is it that I need? Do I need a rest? Okay, nothing changes that drastically in 5 minutes. Lie down. just take 5 minutes and really try to be there and fully rest. Block out the thoughts of the to dos and just be fully there in that rest. I'm going to bask in this rest. Oftentimes, people aren't resting because they're constantly thinking about what's next, what they have to do, how do they keep going. It's not restful, it's not recharging at all. And so, yeah, there's just this conundrum of like productivity and rest, and it's not a learned experience, it's not a learned behavior. And so, we don't know how to do that well. It needs to be taught, it needs to be practiced, and it's very uncomfortable. It makes some people feel lazy or unproductive. And I think sometimes it can be the best thing for them for the long haul. We're looking at long haul, we're looking at sustainability. So that's
That's
really the
that's
goal.
a great practical thing that we can all learn to do. The 5-minute pause, learning how to breathe deeply, taking a walk and unplugging, especially in our digital age. And
Mhm.
I've had the benefit of counseling and coaching, and it's taken me years to learn some of these very basic skills. And it's given me perspective, both for the short term and long term, that, hey, I want to stay healthy in the long haul so that I can see my kids graduate from college and get married and hold the grandkids and
Yes.
not be stressed out that far down the road. And that's going to take some intentionality and doing self care in the day to day and week to week, not just the once a year vacation.
Right.
So well said.
And something that you said kind of strikes me because it's like, we want to see our children, we want our children to, we want to hold our grandchildren. And sometimes I think without these very important steps about learning about what we need and what our boundaries are, when we get there, let's say your child, has that grandchild, you getting to hold them is not the end goal. It's about the relationship. How much of a relationship do you have with your children to be able to have more frequency with your grandchild, right? It's about the content of that relationship. It's not just that, oh, this is mom and this is dad, and it's this assumed familial piety that we have to like fulfill these duties. But is there a relationship? Is there a desire to want to spend time with them? And that's a whole
And vice
nother.
versa.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
So you've opened our eyes to, okay, if we take care of ourselves from week to week and not just wait for the vacation once a year or surviving in deficit below baseline, that it is possible now in our 30s while we're young parents to put some good habits in our life so that we're at baseline and above, so that we're putting into our relationships something that's enjoyable week to week and for the long term, that we want to be together, not just reaching the milestones. What are some things that we can be doing now to add quality of life for ourselves and for our relationships?
Wait, I'm sorry, I missed that. Was that a question or were you summarizing that?
I was summarizing,
Okay, yes.
and I did throw in a question at the end, that
Okay.
what are some things that we can do now beyond the self-care so that we're adding to the quality of relationship, making ourselves emotionally available to those we love, so that we will continue enjoying those relationships for
Yeah.
the long term.
I think again, if we have capacity for ourselves, the byproduct of having capacity for yourself means that you will have capacity for someone else. They're not going to be as annoying. They're not going to be as irritating. You're not going to be as irritable. Because you know what? When you make room for yourself, there is room for others to come in and be with you in that shared space. And so, when I come back and I'm really asking you what recharges you right now, part of even asking that question requires you to be mindful of yourself, because so often we dismiss that question. We hold, we say, you know what, we got to finish this, so I'm not going to eat or drink, I'm not going to use the restroom, I'm not going to rest, I'm not going to do these things until this blank is done. And what I'm saying is, is it that, and I don't know what the right answer is, but is it that important for this thing to be done by the end of the day or whatever deadline you give yourself? Or is it possible that if we delayed it just a little bit, I'm talking about hours, maybe minutes sometimes during the day, that at the end of it, you won't feel quite as exhausted and taxed. That, when you switch from work to family, that you might actually have a desire to actually want to spend time with your kids. And that doesn't mean for hours at a time, or you might want to spend time with your partner. It doesn't mean like these full blown, engaged, connected conversations. Maybe it's not time for that. Maybe it's just a moment of physical touch. And maybe it's just this proximity of being together. But I think oftentimes for partners, when we don't feel connected to ourselves, we want that quick feeling of, am I connected? And I think that's where, again, intimacy comes in, where it's like, okay, let's, either have sex or like, there's this like, it's a very drastic gamut. Like you're not even talking with me at all throughout the day. We don't text, we're not touching base. And then all of a sudden it's like, I want to feel connected to you. And it just doesn't work that way. There has to be some level of balance. And that's where I think those check-ins come in of like, hey, how am I doing right now? I'm feeling, and I want to clarify that most of the time we don't know what we feel. We don't know what we emotionally feel, but we know what we physically feel.
Oh,
Sometimes
interesting.
yeah,
Say more
you
about
feel
that.
your physiological body feels that first. You know, um, when I'm passing through a signal and it's turning yellow and I'm like pushing the accelerator, my body tenses up. I don't say, oh, I'm feeling fearful and scared and am I going to make it? My physical body tenses up and I'm like, okay, let's go for it. Right. And so being aware of just your physical body, it's not always being like, oh, I'm sad or I'm tired, or it's just like, hey, where's my body at right now? My shoulders feel heavy. My chest feels tight. My eyelids feel heavy. My hips feel my body feels weighty. I feel fatigued. Pay attention. Pay attention to those physiological signs in your body. That's the first step that I think is a great way to just check in with yourself, with your body.
Wow, that was some amazing insight. Um, I know I've had the benefit of counseling and coaching, and I'm so glad that you're making this available to people that are just listening to this podcast, because it took me years of practice and learning how to get in touch with my body and how to get in touch with my emotional feelings so that I could articulate what is it that I need. And it's not too late to start. And I'm so glad that you're making that available to us. It's not it's not a luxury. It's a necessity if you'd like to have more fruitfulness along the way in your life, so that you're not just holding the baby, just like you mentioned earlier, holding the grandchild. You're actually enjoying the grandchild, and vice versa, that they want to be with you. And that's something I guess we don't hear a lot of, because we're the children of immigrants. We're in a culture of high productivity and survival. So to get a picture of how life could be that is actually realistic and not just romantic, it almost sounds too good to be true. But
Mm,
you've worked with a lot of people and it's within reach. So that's
absolutely.
reassuring.
Absolutely. And I think the people that seek the help, that want to do things differently, um, we're creating such a different generational cycle for that next, um, yeah, for the grandchild or for your child. It's incredible. I think what our parents could not do because they were on that survival. I mean, they've done so much for us, but there was not capacity for this the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there was not capacity for this emotional, because when we're surviving, we got to eat, sleep, and survive. We got to make it, right? But that upon their sacrifice, I think for many of us, um, we have a different life from what they are living, and hopefully better. And I think now people are beginning to really tap into, like, that's not enough for me. I want more. I'm feeling this lack of purpose or fulfillment. And I think that's a sign of progress, to be aware that you want more and that you desire more. It's incredible. And being able to find out how we get that is an incredible gift to our future generations. It's something that will continue to be in
Mm-hmm.
that pattern of parenting and taking care of themselves, and for healthy marriages in their future. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's
Amen.
ongoing. Yeah.
Amen. And that's what the Bible speaks of, how we can be a blessing to generations
Right.
beyond the third and fourth generation to thousands of generations. And to close the circle and to close this episode, I think we can also mention that as we become more emotionally available to those we love uh, in our marriage, to our children, it can also go back and be a blessing to the parents and grandparents. Say a little bit about that.
I think that, I believe in this idea that our relationship with our children is this vertical relationship, parent child. And this idea of, the water always flows down, like we're giving to the next generation. But in taking care of ourselves, I think it can be a very triggering and painful experience, recognizing what we are giving to our children is the exact opposite of maybe what we've even received or felt in our own homes. And so looking back and being able to honor our parents without hating them, being able to respect and love our parents, even we can begin to, I think, really just acknowledge their intent for us was so good. And we can also find some level of forgiveness in being able to say, like, and it was painful. And I think that's a really uncomfortable space to be. But I think it's very, yeah, the word honoring just comes back, because I think our parents really do desire, they always want optimal for us and, for our future generations, but they're not perfect. And I think we have to learn how to grapple with that. And when we do, I think it really creates space to, again, invite them back into our circle and say, it wasn't perfect, but we honor it. We can take what was good from it, and we can, stop what was bad. Right? It doesn't have to be this perpetuating cycle. And yeah,
Thank you.
it's a painful but a beautiful space to be.
Yes. And that's part of erasing shame and honoring, shame and honor being so closely tied together. And I'm so glad that you spoke into that, because that's kind of the elephant in the room and the thing that we all long for, especially as Asian Americans. We want that harmony and that relationship with the parents as well as with the children, and that continuity to flow better. And so while we can have a brighter future as we have more tools available to us and more exposure, we can also appreciate the sacrifices and honor how far the parents could take us, even though they couldn't take us all the way. So thank you. Thank you for that. Well, great connecting with you again, Jessica.
Thank you.
And I hope to stay in touch with you over the new year and visit with you in person as well.
Yeah, enjoy the holidays, enjoy the time with family, and try to be recharge yourself before these gatherings so that you can be emotionally available, and don't shy away from the discomfort. It's uncomfortable to be in these spaces, and I want to encourage our listeners, it's completely normal. You're not a bad person for it. Just feeling a lot of things. And in some ways, I would say it's so good. Good for you for feeling that.
Yes.
So enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica, and listeners. Have a very happy new year. We'll stay in touch right here at erasingshame.com. Bye-bye for now. Thank you for listening to the Erasing Shame podcast. Check out the show notes at erasingshame.com and subscribe to our email for updates. We would love to hear from you, so please add your comments at our website or on social. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any podcast app, and you can also subscribe on YouTube or follow on Facebook. Please add a rating and review so we can reach more people with our message of health, hope, and compassion. This podcast is the digital outreach of Christian Asia Mental Health. Please consider partnering with us by making a tax-deductible donation at erasingshame.com, and together we can resolve the mental health crisis for every person. Thank you.